You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi again, and thanks for coming back, hopefully for the second time in 2 days, to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, where I'm trying to record my journey along the AT in 2019. I know I've not been as consistent as I would have liked, but really, you try doing this all the way through, and it's a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be, but I have enjoyed bringing it to you. So I think we got to 163, we got 64, 65, 66, I don't know where I am, to be honest with you. But we picked up, we got to Rangeley, and now we're going to tell you about how we've been slackpacking the last couple of days. Let's pick up with whatever the next day is. Day number 164, main route 17, mile 1958.5 to main route 4, mile 1971.6, a 13.1 mile day. The problem with doing these so late now, I'm getting more and more tired, and when I get into town I just want something to eat and drink and basically go to bed. I'm not making very good notes, and this day I hardly remember at all. I know that Seth took us back in the morning, and he because we couldn't get breakfast, we were leaving about 5:30. He took us down to a local gas station where they sold breakfast sandwiches. So I got some breakfast sandwiches and coffee and Gatorade and Snickers. Without drawing too fine a point on it, we did this for 3 straight days, and it didn't work out on any of those days. And by that I mean I did need to dig a cat hole relatively soon into each day's hike. We won't go into that though. Now, as I say, I didn't make many notes of this. Weather was fine. There were no major incidents, and nothing really registered. It was a solid day. As I say, it's 13.1 miles. We saw a few other hikers on the way, including a lady called Yala and Pineapple. The reason I'm telling you about Yala is that Yala is apparently Hebrew for let's go, let's go, let's go, which is exactly what Trigger wants to do all the time. So once she told us about the name Yala, it was Yala, 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 let's go, let's go, let's go. So we were met at main route 4 by, I think it was Seth. Yes, it was Seth again. We had dinner at the Hungry Trout, and Trigger and I met a lady called Coyote, who was a section hiker, chatted with her, out here on her own, thoroughly enjoying herself, entirely unconcerned about any security issues or anything like that, and she was charming. And something we've talked about recently, and I don't think we talked about it necessarily with her, but maybe it was Trig and I and some other people we've talked with as well, about how long a through hike is and the toll it can take on a relationship. And funnily enough, one of the guys, his name's Sweetwater, who we had dinner with the next night, he was saying that when he met his wife at Harper's Ferry, she said, you've never been in better shape than this. And 3 months in, that's probably right. And he said, you know what though, 5 months in, and I feel like I need rehab. Those extra months, going past 4.5 months, is tough to do. It really is, and it can take a toll. And then we've had this discussion with a number of people, and they all feel ready to be finished now, particularly the older people. Maybe the younger people aren't, but the older people are totally ready to finish. So I apologise for not making better notes for day number 164, but that basically is it. Day 165, Perham Stream, mile 1987, southbound to main route 4, mile 1971.6, a 15.4 mile day. Stacey drove us nearly an hour at 5:30 in the morning, getting the breakfast sandwiches once more, by the way, and there was an unmade road for the last 25 minutes. It seemed incredibly rural there, it really did. And she eventually stopped at some huge boulders, and we had to walk another about 1.1 and 1.2 miles up to Perham Stream, which is where the ATU started. And the reason we did it this way, she said she refuses now to pick up people in the evening at that place. She said when she did that before, which she did when we did it, people get lost, they go to the wrong place. Sometimes they don't even, because they can't contact her, they just don't make it all the way there. So she says getting people there, you still get the miles done, and southbound is what it was. Now, this was a disastrous day, the disastrous start to the day anyway. Trigger and I were walking up, and Sweetwater and the colonel, who was actually a retired colonel in the army. In fact, there's an retired Air Force colonel as well, so we're lousy with colonels right now. And Trigger isn't... When you're in the lead, when you're walking along with somebody, you're with your partner, you are responsible for the person behind you. And when I'm walking along in front of Trigger, which is nearly all the time, I call out, Trig, are you okay? Because if I can't hear him right directly behind me, and he'll call back, he's okay. If he doesn't say anything, it means he's too far back. He's out of my range. So I wait till he catches up, and he maybe, because, I don't know, for whatever reason, he doesn't work it that way. And he often just shoots off and just leaves me standing. And so I was hanging about. I always take a while to get ready, to get started, to head off in a certain direction. And this day, remember, we're going south. Well, Trigger heads off. He heads off north. And he goes for over a mile up a mountain, and he's sitting there waiting for, he decides to wait for me then, thinking, I wonder where Mighty Blue is. He waits half an hour, takes photographs. He's gone up 800 feet, and he hasn't checked where I am at all. And I didn't follow him. I didn't know he was going to do this. I suddenly looked round. Sweetwater and the colonel had gone. Trigger had gone. And I thought, where has he gone? Has he gone without me? And I'm thinking immediately he's gone south and just headed off and just left me behind again. So I start heading south. And I think to myself, he's not here. So I'm shouting out, Trigger, Trigger. The Sweetwater and the colonel apparently heard me calling his name for ages. So eventually I turned round, went back to the road, looked around. I thought, he can't possibly have gone north. He would have realised by now. So I went then back south, the right way. And I started walking, thinking, what if something's happened to him? So I go back to the road again. So this is wasting so much time. Then I think to myself, well, he must have gone south. He must be ahead of me now. So I start rushing, going south, the right way. And I get a text from him. Where are you? And he's at the top of the mountain. And I didn't respond because I didn't get a text actually until a little bit later, because his next text after that was, I'm heading south now. He'd obviously gone the wrong way. So I decided to, I'd already decided to stop at the first shelter and wait for him. It was Poplar Ridge lean-to, and I got there about 10 o'clock. Trigger turned up huffing and puffing at about 11 o'clock. He must have really made up some ground to get there. So we wasted an hour there straight away. It's one of those things. But I think it taught him a lesson that I hope he's going to keep. We had 3 very stiff climbs. And I remember when I did this back in 2014, Saddleback, the main Saddleback was under cloud cover, but Saddleback Junior was the first one I actually saw. It was a very exposed, very rocky peak, and really enjoyable. Then we headed up the Horn, and we went above tree line for about 4 miles. Beautiful. And we sat and had lunch out of the wind, and then Saddleback itself. And this time, having had a lousy view last time, it was absolutely glorious again. And then we saw the rain across the lake in Rangeley, and it was headed straight for us. So as we climbed Saddleback, actually, we put on rain gear. We just got a few spots before the sun came out again. So we although we were exposed, and although the rain was potentially going to hit us, it didn't really hit us that badly. And we eventually had a 5-mile downhill hike back to Route 4 in Maine. And there were several very steep, very wet rocks on the way. We had to lower ourselves down by roots and trunks. But we did it. Unfortunately, I fell twice, number 34 and number 35. Second one was a bit of a shock. Put my foot on a root and I just went flying into the bushes at the side. Fortunately, there was no real danger. And that night we stopped off at the Hungry Trout again with Trigger, me, Sweetwater and the Colonel. And, we had a lovely, nice chat, a few beers and a bite to eat. So that was the end of day number 165. Day number 166, Perham Stream, mile 1987, northbound to Main Route 27, Stratton, mile 2003.8, a 16.8 mile day. Well, once again, another breakfast sandwich and, in fact, another cat hole. I don't know what that was all about. Every single day there must be something inside those breakfast sandwiches which just are not working for me. So this time, I went first, and Trigger followed me. And we went up the hill he'd done the day before, and we took another picture at Lone Mountain. He held up the two fingers, to show it was the second time. It was quite funny. But the climb was pretty stiff, but nothing new. We were more worried about the rain that was threatened, and really we were going to get it later on. It started raining intermittently, just wasn't too bad, but when we got to the top there was just a wooded summit, so there wasn't much to see anyway. So when the rain started, I thought to myself, well, I wasn't sweating, so my shirt wasn't wet, so I might as well put on my waterproof jacket, and I put on my hiking skirt, which I hadn't worn for about 900 miles. And the hiking skirt really protected my shorts. It really was quite useful because the rain wasn't heavy. I mean, frankly, I don't think anything protects you from heavy rain. And so we just thought we'd just see how it worked out for us. And it didn't work out too bad at all, actually. Now, Spalding Mountain took us another 800 feet up. We thought we were at the top of Lone Mountain, but we weren't. We had another 800 feet to go. And when we got there, it wasn't even the summit. Once again, it was in trees. So there was this really, really steep-looking blue trail to the summit. And frankly, even though we'd done 2,000 miles, we were not ready to go another steep trail where we didn't really need to, so we didn't go up it. And there were more trees where we were. Then we were right on a rocky ledge on the way down. It was beautiful, really, but the wind was whooping up and the rain was threatening. And I know I wasn't particularly nervous, so I do recall getting quite nervous about it back in 2014, but it was... I stayed away from the edge because it was potentially quite dangerous, but really beautiful. And it was a really tough climb down again, lots of bare rock and slippery roots. So once again, it really was quite difficult. Of course, you head down to head back up again. That's the only reason you tend to head down here. And this time it was to the south and north Crocker Mountains. Didn't enjoy them at all. They were, I don't know. At one point we climbed 700 feet in 0.4 of a mile. It was pretty thrilling, though. I could tell Trigger wasn't enjoying himself. The rain was more intense, and there were periods of hail now as well. We were taking off and putting on garments, and we've done so well and been so lucky with the weather, and we basically haven't had too much experience of hiking in the rain, and this was hiking in the rain, and we didn't really enjoy it. And frankly, by now we were done with the day. But one quick thing, we had to pass the 2,000 mile marker, and the official marker we actually didn't pass till mile 2005. I don't know what that's all about, but there were two little setups of 2,000 miles, and we sat by and grinned for the camera. So 2,000 miles is really quite a distance, so we feel pretty good about that, I must say. And so we had this climb down to Main 27, eventually got there to complete our transfer from Rangeley through Shane and Stacey to Shane and Stacey's place in Stratton, the Stratton Motel. And we were pretty much spent by now. And Trigger only brightened up when the young woman who drove us revealed that she too is from Kentucky. He was ridiculously pleased about that. He loves meeting people from Kentucky. But the evening ended really badly. We got back to the hotel I'd actually intended to do the podcast last night. I just couldn't face it, frankly. I was exhausted. So we went into the White Wolf Inn, where I had a wolf burger and a couple of beers and really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, though, before I went in there, I was walking into the door, talking to Trigger, and I stubbed my toe so badly. I don't want to get too detailed, but it took off. It actually pulled off my toenail, my middle toe, my left foot, pulled off the toenail, started spurting blood. And so fortunately we were able to get cleaned up a bit and get some Band-Aid. And I was hopeful that I'd be okay to hike. Actually, I'm recording this on Sunday, hike on Sunday, because it was bad. I tell you, I didn't like it at all. I've got 2 other toenails virtually just hanging on right now, but this one is uncomfortable, and I knew it was going to be a problem for me on Sunday. So that was a pretty bad end to day number 166. Day number 167. East Flagstaff Road, mile 2020.4, southbound to main route 27, which is Stratton again, mile 2003.8, a 16.6 mile day, and that's where we are, 20.4 miles into it. The Bigelows were one of my favourite hikes in 2014, and this day was just as glorious. This time I was going to go Sobo, so I had a great opportunity to see it from a different perspective, and I've thought about this a few times now. I've often wanted to know what it's like to go Sobo, and I've done it a couple of times now, and it's just a different view, you know. And I've thought about, you know, people have asked me why I want to do this twice. I think I've probably seen the best of the Appalachian Trail, because the days that were lousy for me last time weather-wise, many of them have been great for me this time, and vice versa. So I've seen pretty much the AT at its best and probably at its worst. And to see it southbound as well is another way to look at it. And the Bigelows is definitely my favourite mountain range in the whole of the AT. And Trigger and I went off like a train. We started with an easy early walk before the path climbed more steeply in front of us. And this was the beginning of the climb up Little Bigelow Mountain, which of course last time was our last peak of the day, but this time was our first peak of the day. It was a testing climb, but a great climb. I really enjoyed it, with lots of rocky areas thrown in for good measure as we headed up. And I love that. You know, you get on these rocky areas and you're looking around, you see these spectacular views all around. And the day was clear on this particular day. So, you know, we thoroughly enjoyed it. And at the top of Little Bigelow, which, as I say, was a pretty sweaty and exhausting climb up, there's nearly a mile of these flattish ledges with spectacular views of the lakes all around. It really was special. It was a fairly friendly climb down, followed by a climb up, of course, to one of my favourite mountains on the entire trail, Avery Peak, named after Myron Avery. It was as great as I remembered. We could see the rocky exposed areas, and we thought we were going to go straight up there, and it was kind of daunting to see how much rock there was, but the climb seemed to be quite friendly and taking us a fairly gentle incline for a while in dense, dark, mossy forest before the intensity drew us further upwards. Above tree line, and as soon as you get above it, you just feel it. The wind was gusting to at least 40 miles an hour. We were struggling to stay up. In fact, I actually was blown a bit, and I fell into... I reached out for a tree and I missed it. I fell into the side, so I didn't count that as a fall, although I did actually fall a bit later on as well. I actually had my 37th fall. But that one didn't count because I thought there was a tree. It just collapsed on me and I just went straight over, so I didn't really count it. But it was okay. So we got to the top, all these big winds, and we took a quick picture and we headed down, only to go straight back up to the Bigelow West Peak. Wind, picture, climb down again. You know, we spent enough time at the top basically hanging on for dear life almost while we were looking around, and some of the views around us were just beautiful. And there were more great views and wind to be had on South Horn. North Horn is another of the climbs, but that's another blue trail, and once again we don't do blue trails. We stopped for lunch at Horns Pond Lean-Tos, and there's a couple of them actually, and we we couldn't find a water source, which was a stream, which threatened to be somewhere near the caretaker's tent, which we couldn't find either. And so we went down to the pond and took water from the pond. It was lovely and cold, so it tasted fine to me, although people apparently go swimming there quite a bit, so they can't be terribly pleasant. Another tough climb down for a couple of miles, and my toe was starting to really hurt now. When I started today, I took some ibuprofen, so this time I popped a few more ibuprofen, and we had a pretty easy finish, so it worked out kind of nice. We had a beer and a quick bite to eat, and I decided to put together these podcasts. So that is the end of day number 167. So that's it. You're entirely up to date. It's now Sunday evening. I'm at the Stratton Motel, and we've had a solid week. We put in some really good miles. Yeah, we slackpacked. If you don't like it, get over it. Frankly, we take everything we need for that day, and if we happen to be staying in a motel or a B&B or whatever it's going to be, we take what we need for that day. I'm happy with how it's worked, and we're now still planning on finishing the 26th of August, but there's a possibility we may finish on the 23rd. It's problematic to finish at the park at a weekend, so we're trying to miss the weekend. At the moment, the way the slackpacking has gone, we've built in 2 possible 0 days. If we don't have those 0 days, we can do a few more miles. We may even finish on the Friday the 23rd. Not sure, but certainly the next few days when we've got our 4 packs again, we'll be able to tell. But anyway, we're going to find out soon, so I'll see you next time.